Hi, I'm live. Welcome to my flat and round table. Right now, it's a dinner table, a problematic one that's going to be sat upon and eaten on by a problematic pundit. That would be me. Did you guys see the title? I think it's funny. A problematic pundit ponders problematic products. It is part of an ongoing series on consumer activism. First of all, welcome. I am so glad that you're joining me, whether or not you're joining me in this live, or more likely if you're joining me after the fact, regardless of whether or not you are a returning subscriber or a brand new pair of eyes. I welcome you. I am Lace on Race, aka the Problematic Pundit, aka the Chief Bottle Washer of the Lace on Race Center for Racial Equity, where we tackle the hard things in ways that very few other people do, but all in service to the North Star, lessening and mitigating the harm endured by brown and black people, perpetuated by white people and white supremacy. Gotta love Facebook Live. You're never sure which way you're going. I am so excited to give you this video because it's so important. And hopefully I'm going to be able to, if not sell you concepts, hopefully to explain concepts to you that are going to be in a way that you are not only able to hear, but willing to hear. Conscious consumerism is so important, and so often there seems to be only one way to go. I'm going to be eating dinner because it's 8 o'clock Pacific time and I'm a little hungry. But I'm going to be eating something that I have not eaten in over a decade. You can't see it? Ah, there you can. Chick-fil-A. I haven't eaten a sandwich from Chick-fil-A since the moment that I found out that its founder, its CEO of the corporate brand, was very hostile to LGBT. It spurred what I call a passive boycott that has lasted for over a decade. And indeed, I have to admit, when Chick-fil-A first came to the San Diego market, it hasn't been here that long, maybe about 12 years, I was excited. I'm a Southern girl. Everybody loves Chick-fil-A down south. So when I told my people down south that we were getting a Chick-fil-A, people got so excited. You have got to try the Chick-fil-A! So I did. There was one on Telegraph Canyon Road in eastern Chula Vista, and that was close enough to my Kaiser so that I would always go there afterward. I'd go to Kaiser, then I'd go to Chick-fil-A. And that lasted about a year. And then the passive boycott came. I want to talk to you a little bit about the passive boycott. When corporations do funky things, one way to hold them accountable is to choose not to purchase their products. There is a lot going on in that sentence, because while I feel that it should not be the end of the sentence, it usually is. It's the same thing with almost any kind of activist work. You are either told to do something good or to refrain from doing something bad. And the actors in the world tend to be binary. They're either good actors or bad actors. Again, the same thing in racial justice, but we're going to keep it on conscious consumerism. Now, I've written a couple of articles over the years at Lace on Race and also outside of Lace on Race about both what it means to do basically consumer activism, as well as what it means to do acts of integrity. Oftentimes I conflate them, but I'd like to take them one by one. First of all, let's take the acting with integrity. Anybody who has seen any of my presentations or has read anything that I've written knows what I feel about doing something that will spur a change of behavior, either more of a behavior or less of a behavior, or an extinction of behavior altogether. There are steps that are, in my view, imperative for that kind of activism to be successful. One is to prohibitive, what we want a given corporation or company to do. The other one is prescriptive, what we should be doing instead. And there is also a third thing to ponder, but first let's take these two. First, the prohibition. Chick-fil-A's owner was anti-LGBT. That was enough for me, and still is enough for me, circa 2022. Here is the problem, though. Among the other problems I'm going to tell you about when it came to my actions over the last decade as it pertains to Chick-fil-A. I didn't tell them. Now, 10 years ago, I had not solidified my 6 steps, my 6 imperatives for integral action. But I had them sort of formulated in my head, but I didn't do what I would exhort myself to do circa 22, and what I'm going to do after I get off of this video. I didn't tell them. So I think Chick-fil-A's corporate is in Tennessee. So the good people with the offices with doors and executive assistants somewhere in Tennessee, they don't know that a Lemon Grove housewife chose to not eat from there for the last decade. In other words, no one in Tennessee is shaken in their boots because of my passive boycott. What could I have done to make it less passive and more integral? I could have told them what I could do. In order to talk about what I could have done that I didn't do that I need to do now, is to talk about those imperatives. One, I needed to see or acknowledge that a problem existed. Either something that I found myself, that I discovered myself, or that someone told me about. So in this case, I found out, I think I was reading Out magazine, maybe it was The Advocate, where Chick-fil-A was being called out for its anti-queer practices by its owner. That was enough for me. 2 or 3 column inches, hey, there are other places I can get a chicken sandwich. And so I stopped. That was it for me. But again, I didn't tell them what I was doing. And anytime I passed Fletcher Parkway, where there is a Chick-fil-A, or Telegraph Canyon Road, or I'm gonna hold off on the one that I want to talk to you about, where I purchased this Chick-fil-A sandwich, or Mission Valley. They didn't know that the woman driving past them in her problematic Hyundai was boycotting them. But now we have to look at the prescriptive. One of the things that article did not do is that it didn't tell me where to go. If not this, then what? If not Chick-fil-A, where is a comparable fast food sandwich that I could eat? Nature abhors a vacuum. And a lot of times when people say, don't do this, but they don't get a prescription, what should I do instead? And I realize that there are a lot of vegans and a lot of natural food proponents and local food proponents that would say, well, just don't go to a chain. That was your first mistake. But we also have to look at the best sometimes being the enemy of the good. When you've got 3 crying children in the back of your own problematic SUV, you want to get them chicken nuggets and you kind of don't care where you do. So what does that mean? Now I want to bring you to where I got this Chick-fil-A. I got this Chick-fil-A. It is a brand new one. I think it opened in April, and I have had my brow furrowed about this for months and months and months. Fully 4 months. Let me tell you about this particular Chick-fil-A. It is owned by an African American woman, a young one. She's like less than 30, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with her today and having a very tough conversation with her that's going to lead to an even tougher conversation that she's already agreed to do with me about her choice to open a Chick-fil-A franchise. There are other franchises she could have chosen, but she chose Chick-fil-A. She had good reason to, and she gets kudos for a lot of things from me that I will stand with her all day, every day on. Her administrative offices are located in a Black-owned co-op just off Imperial Avenue, less than a mile away from my house. She employs 140 individuals, paying them all living wages. It is an amazing restaurant. There were fresh flowers on my table. She acknowledges the problematic nature of the CEO of Chick-fil-A. And we talked a lot about her being Esther and my being Mordecai, my shouting truth to power from outside the gates, because I am still going to call Chick-fil-A out for that anti-LGBT practice. I'm also going to do some research on that practice. Where do they stand still? But here's the thing, and it's one thing that she talked to me about and that I need to remember. First of all, this young Black woman is one of exactly 20 Black owner-operators of Chick-fil-A's across the country. And as low as that number is, it's a higher number than most other fast food franchises. That is to say that Chick-fil-A pre-games, brings people up, and partners with them to be owner-operators. For her, it was almost a 10-year process. This is a big deal, because if we are going to prohibit Chick-fil-A, we have to be able to look at their holistic practices, and we also need to look for people who do it better. Her employing 140 people in a revitalizing area. Spring Valley is revitalizing. And we can talk about the demographics of San Diego another day. But Spring Valley went from mostly white flight, took it out. It was an inner ring. It still is an inner ring suburb. It became significantly, but not exclusively Black. There are not a lot of Black people in San Diego. There are no zip codes that are predominantly Black. But there is a significant Black presence, and property values and also corporate investment, both local and national, went by the wayside, which happens with white flight, both in terms of industry, in terms of retail as well. That's something else to consider. She has taken a lot of flack, and she has given her reasons. There are LGBT Chick-fil-A franchises. There are Black-owned, not very many, but there are Black-owned Chick-fil-A franchises. And when we are looking at a franchise business model, and this is where the girl who hates business had to learn a little bit about business, she is taking a lot of risk and a lot of hits. She's doing Chick-fil-A better than Chick-fil-A does Chick-fil-A. She has LGBT employees. She is Esther to my Mordecai. She is inside the gates. And if this not even 30-year-old is successful at this franchise, doing the franchise, doing the Chick-fil-A model, but expanding on it and transcending it, she will have something to say about Chick-fil-A in a corporate way. We say that we want corporations to change. So we need to be able to be strategic and savvy about how corporations can potentially change. So when I have the conversation with her, we're going to start the conversation with me sending her a list of questions, her answering those questions, and then we start a conversation. That may or may not be recorded, may or may not be a video, but it will definitely be transparent. When I told her that I was doing this series on conscious consumerism, and as I put it to her, the conundrum that I have been facing for the last 4 months regarding this Chick-fil-A. Well, this young woman, this entrepreneur, almost broke down and cried in the middle of the dining room. No one has come to her to have these kinds of questions. And I didn't tell her this, but I have felt the same way. Feeling rejected and abandoned by certain cohorts when they have never talked to me. A lot of people who have problems with her have never talked to her. They've talked about her, but they haven't talked to her. That has not affected her business. In the middle of a Thursday afternoon, I was there for a few hours. They have free Wi-Fi. I watched her interact with a clientele that was mostly Black and Latino. I looked around at this amazing restaurant in a place with a dearth of restaurants. Chick-fil-A is not a sit-down restaurant, but she makes it as close to one as possible. She was saying hello to every single person there. She grew up close to Spring Valley in the Lomita Skyline area, and she came back. She pulls from all over: Spring Valley, Lemon Grove, La Mesa, Paradise Hills, Rancho San Diego, North Encanto. And she's doing it well. So the conundrum, Chick-fil-A as a corporation is problematic AF. And I told her that to her face, and she nodded like a bobblehead. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. She herself is not. And so the question that's on the table for me, and that I am posing to the rest of you, is, are the actions of the corporation enough to punish this owner-operator? This is where the integral action comes in. My willingness, and this is where her integrity comes in too. She could have completely ignored me. But this is how it went down. I came in totally incognito. I mean, there's not a whole bunch of people in San Diego that take a look at this mug as a Z-list public figure and go, "Oh my God, it's lace!" So I came in. Took me about 5 minutes to stand there before I ordered the sandwich combo. And I gave my card to one of the employees. And I saw her. And it's like, she saw lace. And the next thing you know, she's at my table. And we're talking, and we're talking, and we're asking and answering hard questions. Questions that this very thoughtful woman had already, I didn't hit her with any curveballs because she had thought about all of the moral and ethical implications. That she still chose Chick-fil-A may or may not be something I ultimately agree with, that she chose this particular corporation with which to partner. But it was not a thoughtless act. She went through the steps of integral action, as I did. She assessed that there was a need or a problem. Sometimes they're both at the same time. She decided that something needed to be done about it. She announced that she was going to do it. She did it. She announced that she did it. And this one, she took the heat for it. She's taking the heat for it in a lot of ways. There are people that come to her on the down low, kind of like with me. Oh, it's always fun. But I admire the fact that she walked through that process. Good on her. In the same way that I walked through the process in a way that I did not do a decade ago. This is a big deal. So, we were talking about eating my problematic repast, a problematic pundit eating her problematic repast. Well, I didn't just get the sandwich. I also needed a drink, and I did drink their Coke Zero. It was good. But then I needed another drink when I got back to the center. And so because we want to be able to talk about this. So I put on my bib apron, which is husky. I'm glad that you can read the whole thing. It's great. I love it. And most of the time I wear it just because I'm the biggest slob. And so whenever I eat, I know I'm going to spill. So I wear my apron. But it's got 13 pockets. It's actually made for construction guys. And it is indestructible. I will be wearing this thing when I'm 90 years old. Early birthday present to myself. Wait for it. Wait for it. It's from Home Depot. Another problematic business. But I want to tell you about Home Depot. Home Depot is in hot water, not for its union busting practices, although it's there, not for some of its discriminatory practices. That's true too. But because of its owners, the CEO at the time, talking in a problematic way, again, about the gay community. And there was a low-key boycott. Here's something that was forgotten. Again, there's usually, and I come from a faith-based background, and I always talk about, in grassroots, governmental, whatever, that there's like something said at the top, and it may or may not trickle down. In faith-based, it's like by the time you get to the parish priest or minister and then to the pews. In this case, happily, it didn't. Home Depot is one of the largest employers of the gay community, particularly of females who consider themselves LGBT. This is a big deal. So here's a person who is saying something problematic in Atlanta, Georgia, or Atlanta, Georgia itself. But the individual stores act differently. When it comes to Home Depot, I'm also thinking about other nuances. The first nuance is that Home Depot, there's one in Lemon Grove, which is the most diverse city, full-on city, not just, an unincorporated county, city in San Diego County. And it's also a presence in 92113, Logan Heights, Mountain View, Barrio Logan, where I grew up. There's a Home Depot there, a really big one. It's part of a revitalization effort that they've done successfully. It is not a gentrification project, much like some of the things that have been seen from the Jacobs family. They have the Qualcomm money going up and down Euclid Avenue. But this was different development money, and it's done well. And Home Depot is the anchor. And the general manager of that Home Depot is African American. Again, we're talking about nuance. And I know that some of you guys are going, ugh, this is a distinction without a difference. It kind of is, and I want you to stay with me. So, yes, CEO problematic. Individual stores, not necessarily. And when we're talking about who we could go to rather than this one or that one, let's look at alternatives. Let's go back to Chick-fil-A. In that same area, the same parcel, there is now a Target, a Ross, a DD's Discount, and a Smart & Final. There used to be an Albertsons, part of what some of you would know as the Safeway chain, that had to give up that store when it merged with Vons about a decade ago. What used to be Kmart is now a really small, not quite a Target Express, but a small Target, then next to it a Ross, next to it a DD's Discount. But on the the far northern end, there's been for a good 20, 25 years a Rally's burger. I like Rally's. I like them a lot. I especially like their fries. And if I was going there and I wanted to get a quick lunch, I would go to Rally's. And in fact, for the last 4 months, I would side-eye that Chick-fil-A and always go to Rally's. All right, well, obviously there's a question to be asked here that has not been answered. Well, if I'm not going to go to Chick-fil-A and I am going to go to Rally's, how do I know that Rally's is any better? I don't. How do I know that Target is better than Walmart? Target's problematic too. It is one union busting son of a gun. It has done some labor practices that would curl your fake hair. But Target is often considered the anti-Walmart. If not Walmart, then Target. But are we doing a deep dive? Are we doing a laser focus on Target's own practices? I mean, part of Target's sort of brand image is that they are the anti-Walmart. Well, if they're going to be the anti-Walmart, they need to be the anti-Walmart in more than just their marketing is better and the people that you see in ads are prettier. They need to actually be making substantive changes to differentiate themselves from a problematic retailer. Speaking of problematic retailers, let's look at Walmart for a moment. Before we go to Walmart, let's look at Hobby Lobby, which I am not going to go into for those reasons. But here's the thing about Hobby Lobby. In fact, more than a couple, over the last 20 years or so, the crafts and sewing market has consolidated. There isn't a lot of it anymore. In fact, there was a semi-major player, Joann's, that is completely out of the San Diego market now. And I think that that is worth remembering. You know, if I want a seam ripper, where do I go? If I want my guilty pleasure, which is a rug hooking kit, where do I go, if not Joann's? Well, there's Michael's these days, there's Hobby Lobby, and there's Walmart. When it comes to sewing notions and crafts notions, Walmart is a juggernaut. So what do we do? In another video, we're going to talk about the harsh fact that spoiler alert, there's no such thing as 100% conscious consumerism. That while activism, I think that consumer activism and shareholder activism, which is a different animal, are important. They are not necessarily the end all and be all, and they are of limited value if you are not going to go the complete distance in terms of ethical and integral action. So I got the Chick-fil-A lemonade, problematic as it was. It did not cause a hole in my throat. I'm grateful for that. But then I wanted tea. And so I went and I got this. Oh my goodness, it's big. It's Milo's. You can only get it one place in San Diego County. I don't know if you can get it other places in the South because it is a Southern brand. You can get it at Walmart. But I didn't get this at just any Walmart. Problematic as Walmart is, it's better than other major retailers in being in underserved areas. Walmart, the Walmart I got this at, it's a Walmart neighborhood store, not your general gigantic Walmart. It's scaled down. It's a big Walmart food and drug department. Doesn't have clothes, doesn't have hardware or any of that stuff. It's positioning itself somewhere between Trader Joe's and a small Target. And they do it well. There's a lot of specialty items. It was literally the nicest Walmart I've ever been in my life. And I'm including 35 years ago, more or less, when Walmart first came into the San Diego market and came into Poway. And my mom, being from Arkansas, made me drive her all the way to Poway so that she could walk and have a taste of Arkansas. And before people were talking about how problematic Walmart was, up until about the mid 90s here in the San Diego market. Mom had been ill for about 3 years, but every week I would drive that woman to Poway, which was about 25 miles away. Was so grateful when they opened one in the South Bay, so I didn't have to, take a passport and a change of underwear to take her to Poway. Let's talk about Target and Poway for a minute, and we'll talk about it more later. But when I say that Walmart was late to the party and didn't really, Mother was already sick, so it was 93, 94. When Walmart came into the San Diego County market, Target had already been there or in the market for about 10 years. Both of them are union busters. I didn't go into Target. This was before I was even thinking about conscious consumerism, but I am a union girl. I've always been a union girl, and there were union stores that died because of Target entering the market, with both Target and with Mervyn's, which was its sister store at the time. Decimated union stores. White Front, Yellow Front, Gemco, Fedco, all gone. Target just squeezed them out. Not Walmart. Not Walmart. Target. I remember the first time I actually went in there, I think it was 96 or 97. I was going on a camping trip and I needed some stuff. They were the only people around, open at 10, and I went into Target, and I felt going into Target the same way as I felt going into Chick-fil-A today, at least initially. No one talks about the ethical compromises of entering a Walmart or a Home Depot. When it comes to Home Depot, yes, they are in underserved areas, but they are still problematic. So what's the other alternative? Lowe's? Well, there aren't very many Lowe's in San Diego County. There are way far fewer, maybe half, of Lowe's compared to Walmart. And none of them, not one, are located in majority Black or majority working class to lower middle class neighborhoods. Lowe's knows how to position itself. Its CEO is African American, point in its favor, but is it rigorous to only look at that? Lowe's is better than Walmart because of, or Home Depot or Walmart because of X. We have to look at it holistically. That is to say, and we're going to talk about it more when we talk about more about conscious consumerism, that there are no cut and dried, rigid, binary choices. The problematic pundit, aka the charlatan cult leader, everyone says that I want to try to tell you what to think. That's not true. I care less about what conclusions you come to than I care about that you went soup to nuts through the process of integral action. A case could be made, absolutely, to never darken the door of a Walmart again, regardless of where they located in Barrio Logan. A case can be made to not go to Home Depot, regardless of whether or not there's a Lowe's within 30 miles. The case can be made to never darken the door of a Chick-fil-A. But we need to be able to look at all of the practices, which is why making ethical and moral decisions based upon a 3-paragraph article, and nowadays it's even less. It's a meme. It's a 20-word meme on Facebook where you're scrolling and rolling. To live a holistically ethical life demands that you go deeper. That meme should be the beginning of the conversation. And if after that rigor you decide to take the action, then you need to look at all 6 elements of action with integrity. You need to be able to assess that there's a problem. You need to uh, determine what you're going to do. You need to say it out loud. And in this case, that means letting the retailer or the restaurant know what you're going to do. In addition to your friends and family, your circle of influence, then you need to do it. And you need to do it consistently. If I'm going to not do, because I have a sneaking suspicion that even if it wasn't an ethical choice, there's very little I couldn't get in Hobby Lobby that I couldn't get somewhere else. But they need to know. Hobby Lobby needs to know that when I'm looking for a seam ripper, I don't go into their store. And here's why. If someone says, let's go shopping, and I say, okay, and they say, well, first stop is Hobby Lobby, and then I risk the friendship by saying, I'll just stay in the car. And then tell them why if they ask, maybe even if they don't ask. And risk the hard conversation. Because a lot of times when you're doing something that no one else is doing, or not doing something that everybody else is doing, it can create a relational choice point and a relational pain point. We're going to talk about that later too. I wish this was an interactive, because I'm anticipating the questions that you all have. But the takeaway is that it is not binary. It shouldn't be. Yes, I want you to make ethical choices, but not just for the 3 or 4 companies that people have decided that are worth being called problematic. In so doing, giving every other restaurant and retailer a pass. We need to make sure that we're not going out of the frying pan into the fire with another retailer or restaurateur. That is every bit, if not more, problematic. And lastly, we need to stop looking at the 3 major categories that we decide we have opinions about, which is retail, be it apparel, home goods, hardware, whatever, or restaurants. That's pretty much it. Because I'll tell you something. These are Fiskars. Scissors. How do they do on an ethical scale? I don't know. You probably don't either. Whether or not there are sexier categories than others, such as whether or not I use Colgate instead of Crest, and this is Crest, which is Procter & Gamble, and Colgate I think is Unilever. What about those major conglomerates? It is not enough to only focus and then virtue signal on the ones that people pay attention to. We need to be paying attention across the board. And that's where a lot of people throw up their hands, and we'll talk about that later. It is possible to live an integral life that is conscious but compromised, or should I say compromised but conscious. We can do as best as we will, not as best as we can. That is another carve out, y'all. We'll talk about that too. But as best as we choose to. That means taking a look at the choices that we make with our dollars. That means being vocal about what we believe in and how that plays out, because it's just so important. And lastly, we need to be willing to tell ourselves the truth. That is where a lot of us drop the ball, because to tell the truth about the choices that we make calls into question our own self-concept. It means something. I can't find it. It means something that I am a Crest girl and not a Colgate girl. What exactly it does mean is open to query and to critique and to confrontation, mostly by me. So let's talk in our next video. Let's talk about how we can become more conscious and intentional about the choices that we make. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I am inviting you to explore with me how to do it and who to be as you are. The Problematic Pundit signs out. If you like this and you want to hear more, make sure that you are hitting the subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, hitting that notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime I upload. Smash the share button, share far and wide. And if you want to keep this content coming, please be sure to consider becoming a sponsor or a one-time contributor to the Lace on Race Center for Racial Equity. There are ways to do it all over the place. This will ensure that content continues. We ask questions that very few other people ask, and we answer them in novel ways. We invite you to become companions and to start living out both a racial justice and a relational ethics praxis in a whole new way. Thank you.